And I'm going to introduce 4 very basic communication skills just to sort of have some common language on the table. First one, inquiry, right? If you watch any given conversation or you partake in one, you will ask questions, right? So the way we define inquiry is asking questions to learn information. So I-27 or 1-27, yeah, near the back. So this is something that is a normal part of conversations, and unfortunately there are subsets of this that people pose as a question mark, but that we wouldn't call actually a question. Something like if I say to you, well, don't you think that da-da-da-da-da, question mark? What's the only correct answer you can give me from my perspective to that question? Yes, Peter, absolutely, 3 bags full, right? Any other answer and we're in an argument, right? So we would say that's not really a question, right? That's a statement in the form of a question. Isn't it obvious that, da-da-da-da-da, question mark? Don't you think that, wouldn't you agree that all of those, and yet we slide those in. Then there's what I like to call heat-seeking missile questions, which is a question designed to elicit a response that you can use to destroy their argument. Those can be tricky. Here, really, we're talking about questions where you learn new information. Now, interesting, some of you are lawyers, others, all of you work in the space of law, if you will. If you think about the context of litigation, and specifically the context of cross-examination, a lawyer doing a cross-examination is for good reason. You are trained never to ask a question you do not know the answer to. Why? You don't want a surprise, right? A surprise is really bad news. It's a problem to get a surprise in that context, because in that context, the cross-examination has a predetermined conclusion in mind, a storyline, and the only purpose of those questions is to get the witness to confirm it and elicit answers that confirm that predetermined conclusion. Now, what's unfortunate and interesting about us when we get into a debate is actually we have an unofficial construct like that often. I have a predetermined conclusion, and so do you, and they aren't aligned. And I'm trying to ask you questions to get you to confirm mine, and vice versa. So we actually aren't asking real questions. But in problem solving, actually, while some of the new information I learn might be bad news for me, and I won't like that in that moment, it's actually important, because that stuff that I'm missing is driving your or other party's actions and choices and thinking, and if I don't know what it is, I can't do anything with it. Does that make sense? In fact, we often describe that new information as the raw material for a possible solution. No guarantees, but potentially the raw material. Now, a second piece that we would see in normal conversations is paraphrasing, right? So you just define that as summarizing what you think they said. In your words, the way you talk. Right? Please do not do what you can get a bird to do for you, which is why it's called parroting, right? Which is repeating word for word what they said. Now, unless your goal is to annoy the heck out of somebody. If you'd like to annoy the living daylights out of somebody, repeat back word for word exactly what they said the way they said it, right? And you'll see people doing that sometimes. They say, so what I'm hearing you say is da-da-da, and they'll say exactly your words. Now, I don't know about you, but that really bugs me, right? I'm like, punch in the face coming soon, right? So what's that prove to the other party? The fact that you can spit back the exact same words, what does that prove to them? That's right, sorry. Yeah, that you're a parrot and that you have a good memory. That's about it. Does it show understanding? I don't think so, right? So, and it also feels really inauthentic, like fake. And so this is not that. This is summarizing what you think they said in your words the way you talk. Now, my question to you is, why would this be in your selfish interest? Forgetting of the other party, there are benefits to the relationship and the other party, but why would this be in your selfish interest, especially when you disagree?
Well, maybe it just buys you time to think about what you'll say next.
Okay, so he said maybe it buys you time to think about what you want to say next. It could do that. That's one thing. What else can it do for you? How can it help you?
So you understand what you're thinking when you say it, rather than just thinking. If you say it, you kind of put it out there so you have to understand it, kind of thing.
Yeah, really good. So it can help us think of like, what are we thinking about this as we say it? There's another one. What else does it do?
There's a layer of accountability because if there's any misunderstanding, it's their opportunity to correct what you understand.
Yeah, and actually that's right. I like the way you phrase it. It kind of introduces a kind of accountability almost, because if there's misunderstanding, well, then it's actually in that person's interest to correct you. And so for me, very much along those lines, I want to make sure I know what they're saying to me, because I don't want to invest my energy and effort in fixing the wrong problem. And I don't want to argue the wrong point. Right? So I want to know what this person said, especially if I don't like it. Now, that's not what my instinct says at that time. My instinct is like, shut up, you're an idiot, right? But then I have to have this little internal negotiation that says, oh crap, I went to this workshop about communication skills. And anyway, it's like, why is it in my interest to ask this, right? Okay, so how does that sound? I ask you, say more about why you think this is not okay. Or, I've told you, I don't think we can do this. This is going to cause some problems for Rogers. You really want to do it. I'm still not understanding why you're so convinced that this is important or it's not a problem. And they say whatever they say. And then the paraphrase would be something like, okay, so let me see if I got this. You're saying for those two reasons, that's why my point is not valid. Is that right? Something like that. And then I'll get what I get. They'll say yes, no, whatever. Okay, then I might ask another question. Okay, so I'm still missing it. Please explain it again. And then I'll try to get that. So that's paraphrasing. Related to that, but going a point beyond it, is what we call acknowledgement, which is recognizing their view or feelings. These are different things. Very important caveat, without agreeing. And what does that sound like? So if the person has said something and I summarize, okay, so you're saying it's these two things that are the most important to you. Yes. The acknowledgement, if I wanted to acknowledge their view, is, okay, I think I'm starting to get where you're coming from. Or, that makes some sense to me. Now, what's the benefit of that? Why is that, again, in my selfish interest, forgetting the other party for a minute? Yeah, right, so empathy, a stage for conversation as opposed to confrontation. And by the way, you might add to that, because I think the reason we don't do this often is because, number one, in our own minds, these are collapsed, the idea of acknowledgement and agreement. I can't and won't acknowledge your point if I disagree, because you'll think I'm agreeing. And I don't want to bear that risk, so I don't do it. But you could, and you could say, that makes some sense to me. And I have to tell you, I still see it really differently. Thing is, I want to make sure I understand where you're coming from, otherwise, how are we going to get anywhere? So can I ask you a few more questions? Okay, now you're back up into question mode, potentially. Now, acknowledging their feelings, we'll try that out a little bit later, is different, but also potentially powerful. And it can be as simple as, you're really pissed off with this, aren't you? Damn right, I'm really pissed off. And you might, the hair might be flying for a minute while they vent. What's the potential benefit of that? Of acknowledging an emotion. How can it help? Yeah, you're saying it's going to take some of the personal heat out of it, if you will. Yeah.
Just allows the person to be heard, even if you don't agree with their view, everyone wants to be heard and what their opinion is. So. Yeah. Yes, right. We all want to be heard, and in fact, when we disagree, we want to be heard even more, and yet we do less of it. It's this interesting irony. Sometimes the frame of reference on your conversation might be, I get that this is bad news for you, and I don't want to dress it up or pretend it's good news. And I can only imagine how frustrating it is, because you spend a ton of time, effort, energy working on this, and here I am coming in saying, hey, there might be a different way that you can do this, but the way you're currently planning, we can't see it. We can't see it being okay. It lets people land a little bit. It lets, so we'll try that out a little bit later. And then finally, another piece of a normal conversation, advocacy. This is the piece that's off your page, explaining your point of view, right? It's kind of funny that that's the one that's off the page, because this is the one we don't need help with. Oh yeah, let me tell you how it is. The way we often advocate is, let me tell you how it is.
How much do you like hearing it that way? Not much, right? It's the voice of, I am the all-knowing entity, the supreme beer and holder of universal knowledge, and I'm here to enlighten you, you poor fool. You ugly bag of mostly water, per Star Trek, so, let me enlighten you with the truth. It's like, ooh, careful. More accurate, factually, and probably easier to take is, here's my take on it. Here's my perspective on the situation. Boom. And now let's talk. And you might say, look, I've done my homework. I've checked this with other people. I'm not sure there's going to be much wiggle room, any wiggle room. I can't see any right now. But let's talk about it. Here's what we've come to. And out it comes.